Welcome to the 2024 Meet the Candidates Nights for the Beacon City School District School Board. We typically only have one of these evenings if the race is competitive. So this year we have 4 candidates for 3 seats. So it gives the public an opportunity to hear what the candidates have to say and how they would approach this role. We solicited questions for this program in advance, and there was kind of a common theme that emerged in some of the questions that I think we can answer up front rather than having the candidates have to speak to it, and that is, what exactly do school boards do? The school board sets the district's direction with performance-based goals. That would be our board goals, the strategic plan, all of which are available on our website. Ensures the alignment of strategies, resources, including the approved budget, policies, programs, and processes within the district goals. Assesses and accounts for student achievement using comprehensive data through deliberation and open communication. This usually comes up through the principles, through programs that we've established, and then is reported to the board. Conducts performance evaluations of the superintendent to continuously set standards of improvement. The board also leads the district by accentuating what is working and then trying to correct whatever is not working. The school board does not run the day-to-day of the district. We empower the superintendent to do that. He brings us, through his administrators and teams on the building level, his recommendations, his thinking, and then we will ask questions and approve those approaches. So if anybody, I would like to then introduce our 2 moderators for tonight. Deborah Davidovitz moved to Beacon when she was pregnant with her son, who, after attending Beacon City Schools, is now a rising junior at Binghamton University. Deborah is a teacher of the deaf and hard of hearing, an artist, and a beekeeper. Terry Nelson is the founder of the Beacon Film Festival. He is a freelance writer. He is a former 2-term city council member. He has lived in Beacon for 15 years, and most importantly, he's the parent of the Beacon player star Twyla, who will be attending Manhattan School of Music. She is a graduating senior. So I turn it over to you guys.
Thank you. Welcome, everyone. So I'm going to tell you just a little bit about our process in gathering questions and coming up with the questions. And then we're going to give our candidates the opportunity to introduce themselves. And then Terry and I will alternate presenting them with the questions, which they have had a chance to look at. So a Google form went out to a whole bunch of people, and we had 19 people respond, which resulted in over 40 questions because most people who responded had more than one question. Given our schedule tonight, we anticipate we'll have time for about 5 to 7 questions. And in putting the questions together, what we tried to do was kind of synthesize like what the common messages were and put them into a form that seemed appropriate for this context. So obviously, you know, we couldn't answer everything, and if your question was not answered tonight, thank you for participating, even though that couldn't happen. All right, so I think I will. Do you want to start, LaVon, introducing yourself? Okay.
Hi, I'm LaVon McNair. I'm born and raised here in the city of Beacon. I went through the Beacon City School District, and it's a pleasure to be here to meet with you tonight and to answer questions you may have.
Hi, I'm Flora Stadler, and I have been a school board member for going on 6 years now. And I've lived in Beacon for about 12. I have 2 children in the district, one in elementary school and one in middle school.
Hi, my name is Chris Lewine. My son turned 5 on Saturday and will be entering kindergarten in the school district this fall. And I've been an educator for my whole 15-year career as first a high school math teacher and a high school principal and working for several education nonprofits. So really excited to talk about Beacon schools tonight.
I'm Meg Phillips, Megan Phillips on the ballot. I am brand new to New York. Let alone Beacon, it'll be 2 years that I've been here in August. But I have an opportunity to be a part of my children's education currently, right now. And I would like an opportunity to participate. Thank you.
Okay, let's get started then. All right, let's go with Levon. To start off, what has led you to want to serve on the Board of Education? What is the one thing you'd like to accomplish in your role on the Board of Education, and how do you envision achieving that goal?
Ooh, that's a lot of questions there. Um, what led me here was just wanting to advocate for the needs of the students and the parents in the community, as well with the teachers. Um, and when it comes to the students and the parents, for those people who feel unseen or underrepresented, I want them to have a face that they feel like they can relate to. Also, I wanted to help improve school policies and build on what policies are already currently working for the school district. And also, I just wanted to be involved in the educational landscape of my community. I don't have any children, but my niece and my nephews attend Beacon City School District, and I'm extremely involved in their lives and everything that goes on. So, of course, I'd want to be a part of, what goes on with that. And what was the other question? I'm sorry.
Okay, what goal would you like to accomplish?
I don't have any specific goal. I just want to, be here to help improve what we've got going on and just continue to have it welcoming to all people who are involved.
Great, thank you. Laura?
6 years ago, I decided to run because I believe in public education, and I wanted to participate in the public education of the district. I had been going to school board meetings, and at the time, the district was going through incredible upheaval. It had gone through a series of different superintendents. There was a lot of contention, and there were a lot of things that needed to be resolved, but there was also a great deal of potential. And I feel like a lot of that potential, you see the fruits of that being realized now. And so why I think I want to continue running is I feel like my job here is not done. And I'm really dug in, I'm really committed, and I feel like I spent the first term sort of figuring everything out because it's actually a pretty complicated volunteer position. I mean, you have to understand things about policy, things about like the way school districts work and how everything fits together and who does what and who can do what. And once you figure all that out, then you become an effective board member. I think in terms of achieving a goal that I want to achieve, I'm really involved in advocacy at the state level, and I'm concerned about our foundation aid, and I'm also concerned about supports for pre-K, specifically special education pre-K, and I want to keep advocating for that and figuring out the best ways to have those important conversations with our legislators to get the support we need.
Thank you. Chris, you're up.
Yeah, thank you. So like I said, I've been an educator for my whole career, serving schools to try to serve all students. And I do that because I really believe in the power of education to transform kids' lives, but also in the power of public schools to kind of anchor a community and bring a community together. And so now that my son is starting in the Beacon Public Schools, I want to help bring that experience and that perspective to the Beacon Board of
That
Education.
wasn't for you, I'm sorry.
Oh, good. Like, wow, time goes really fast
I
up
knew
here.
it this. No. You're doing great. Keep going.
Thanks. So, yeah, I'd be really eager to serve the Beacon Schools and to bring my experience in education. And, I think that, like Flora was mentioning, the Beacon Schools have been through a lot, right? They've kind of stabilized after a moment of upheaval, as you said. We've been through the pandemic, but now the question is kind of like, what's next? So one thing that I would like to bring to the board, and maybe a goal that I'd like to accomplish, is to really develop a clear vision for learning at the district, and align our curriculum and instruction to that. I think Beacon has made a lot of progress in extracurriculars and even the strategic plan, but even the strategic plan itself just doesn't say a lot about what's happening in the classroom. And I think that what's in the classroom should really be as rich and rewarding as everything that's happening around it as well. So I think as a board member, I could contribute to bringing together a lot of voices and hearing a lot of input so that as a district, we could have a really clear vision for what kind of learning do we want to happen inside our classrooms, and how can we support our teachers and our staff to be able to bring that experience to our kids.
Great, thank you. So do you prefer Meg or Megan?
Meg.
Meg. Okay, Meg.
Easier to
Your turn.
pronounce.
Yes.
Thank you. So as I said, I'm brand new here. On the 29th, I will have been widowed for 3.5 years. I'm a single mom. And I have essentially been out of work since COVID. And I am lucky to have the financial resources to volunteer for this opportunity. As far as my primary goal as, like I said, a widow, a single mom, and as well as everything else going on in the United States right now and in our community, is really mental health. One of the things I would like to accomplish is ultimately addressing cell phone usage in our schools, as well as the needs of sleep related to high school students. We have had access to this information for over a decade now when it comes to the neurological development of teenagers, as well as middle schoolers. Elementary schoolers are not, anyone who knows children, they wake up super early and are not affected by early start times. But when you actually look at the information, when it comes down to, everybody knows that sleep relates to mental health. We all know that. And ultimately, it does affect performance in the school. And with performance comes confidence, and that would be my primary focus, addressing cell phones, social worker access ratios in the school, making sure that we do not have a 300-to-1 ratio of students to social workers.
Thank you.
I have to apologize. My timer skills are just all off. If the timer doesn't work, I'm just gonna go like this.
Yeah,
But you're all doing great.
do it
okay?
really
It's
big.
just- I'm trying not to stress too much about it. I didn't know this would be the hard part. So we're now for the next question. We will ask Flora to start. So we'll kind of rotate who starts. So as with most school districts in this country, Beacon's still feeling the effects of the COVID years in regards to all aspects, academic performance, reading and math deficits are showing, as well as social and behavioral issues. Do you have any suggestions for how we might best support our staff and our students as they continue to face these challenges?
I think I would speak from sort of what the district has been doing and growing from there. But I know, speaking to the social and behavioral issues, that was definitely something that we all saw when we returned from after COVID. And I think that the schools were set up pretty well in terms of having teachers well-versed in restorative classrooms and restorative justice and circle time, and having these sort of structures in place where students could express themselves, could mess up, and come together and talk about what's happening and what they're feeling. And I think just setting up that structure actually really went a long way. For kids like my kids who were young at the time, that it went a long way. And I think that we've definitely seen, you had kids who were like, they entered middle school or they entered high school, but behaviorally they were still little kids. They were still middle schoolers, or they were still elementary students. And I think that the teachers brought an understanding of that I really appreciated. And I think just continuing to keep that in mind, you're right that like social worker, psychologist, and counselor ratios are really important. I think the district does a good job of that. I want us to maintain that. Also, policies around bullying, which is something that we often look at and often consider, like, what are the repercussions? What are we teaching? How are we talking to students around bullying at every age? In terms of, I'll speak specifically to the reading deficits because I know this year Governor Hochul talked about the science of reading and implementing that, and we just had a presentation about the new sort of reading program that we're going to be implementing in the district, and I'm really excited about it, and focusing on the different pillars, like not just a specific like brand of reading education, but really looking at it holistically from like vocabulary and phonemes, and which is a word I learned from our assistant superintendent, and sort of writing and like the whole picture of literacy. And I have high confidence that. Sorry, I'm
Nope,
doing
that's
it.
okay. Finish your
I have high confidence that this kind of work is going to help bring our kids back to where they need to be. That's it.
Great, thank you.
Thanks for the wave.
Chris?
Yeah, thank you. So as a former math teacher, I see a question about reading and math deficits, and it gets me excited. But I know that even before we start talking about math or reading, we just need to make sure the kids are okay, basically. And as a teacher and principal, I know that the extra resources that we can provide to students are a really important part of that equation. But it starts with making sure that kids are okay in the classroom. They spend most of their time at school in the classroom. So how have we chosen curriculum that's not just going to sort of be rigorous with reading and math deficits and continue pushing students and challenging students, but also how are we prioritizing their social and emotional development? How are we just making it a fun and joyous place to be? When we see attendance rates go down or chronic absenteeism go up, our students and families are telling us something. Something is not allowing them to come to school, and then even the ones that are present physically aren't always present sort of mentally and ready to learn. And so I think what's most important is really supporting teachers, because teachers are in the middle of all of this, and their jobs have changed after COVID with all of these new needs that students are presenting with, the academic ones and the behavioral ones. So I would really think about how can we support teachers with that kind of full package of rich curriculum that's going to engage students, but also what support do we need to give teachers so that they have the skills and the practice and the safety and security with their own work, that they can really be there for students and just create both safe but also fun and joyous places to learn, where students can attack these more academic issues of some math and reading deficits that might be there.
Thank you.
I am also super excited about the literacy program that's being implemented. I have been sort of studying education since I graduated from high school. Due to various traumas in middle school, it took me a while to go back to the classroom. But the program, essentially the reading program, it's competency based, which is basically the same educational trajectory I studied in Quebec. They had just passed this. No Child Left Behind was happening here, and I wanted to learn a different style of education. Same thing with problem-based learning, backwards design, going from the end goal and moving back to ensure that students are given step-by-step processes to get to that. And this is my first year in the public school system. It has actually been an amazing experience. The boys are my oldest is at Glenham. It's been really great. The teachers, he's in a co-taught class, which is super exciting. Just to have that diversity of learning styles in the same educational setting, as well as the additional support systems. I've been incredibly happy with that. I am, yes. I'm new here, yes. Was recently described as a social butterfly. I am incredibly friendly. I like people. I like meeting people. And there have been some concerns about the middle school in Beacon, and specifically dealing with issues of bullying. And that is personally, as far as effects go, I'm still reeling from the kids will be kids attitude that I grew up in the school system with. Amazing academic education. Personally, not so great.
Thank you. Anne Levon?
I think that we just have to make sure that our teachers feel supported, because I feel if they feel supported, then that'll pour over into the students wanting to show up, and there won't be a lack of or attendance in school. Just making sure we have social workers available, if teachers need aides. I just, like I said, it's the focusing on just creating a good environment for the children. And that starts with providing a good and giving good resources to our teachers. Because if teachers are coming to school and they're feeling good, then they're going to pour that over into the kids. And then the kids will perform because they'll be in a good and positive environment. And I think that'll work. But I do feel that having a social worker available for the students is something that we do need, because with the technology, they have so much access to technology, that throws them off a little bit. So I think it's important that we do what we can to support our teachers and the students.
Thank you. Chris, what do you consider to be a major accomplishment for the Beacon City School District over the past few years? And what is one issue that you feel still needs to be addressed? And how do you propose addressing it?
Yeah, thank you. I think the Beacon schools are in a great place, and not by accident. I think that a lot of people have poured a lot of work into getting them to where they are. From my perspective, and I'm starting to get more involved, right? I've been coming to meetings for the past several months or so, but I think the stability and the strategic planning that the schools and the board in particular, in partnership with the superintendent, has been able to achieve is really important. Right now, like Flora mentioned, state funding is going down, but the reason why we're not talking about more cuts or anything that's student facing is because a lot of the strategic planning and thinking ahead that the board has done. So I think that is really important. It's not something that maybe everyone is thinking about all the time, but it's part of what the board should be thinking about. And then I think in terms of experiences that are felt more by families, some of the extracurricular growth has been really, I think, inspiring and amazing, and I think should be continued. So a lot to celebrate. You're going to hear me talk about this a lot this evening as a former teacher and a former principal, but I do think that getting clear on what's our instructional vision, what is the vision for in-classroom learning, and how do we make those experiences just as rich as the extracurricular activities and all of the other amazing community that we have, I do feel that still needs to be addressed. And if you do look at the strategic plan on the website, you're not going to find a lot about in-classroom learning, and I think that's an opportunity for us as a board and as a community to really talk about what we want to be true in the place where kids spend most of their time when they're at school, do most of their interaction and most of their learning. So I think I can bring that perspective both on the full board, on any committees that are focusing on policy or curriculum and instruction, and I'd love to bring the experience that I have in education to partner with the superintendent and the other staff to help build out that vision so it can be just as strong as the rest of our program.
Thank you.
Yeah, it was.
So, as full day pre-K, game changing. Not that many areas offer that, and since there are so many two-parent working households everywhere, offering that to parents it's game changing. Small class size, I think, is amazing. The average ratio, at least in elementary school, is about 13-1, which is, and I am coming from Massachusetts, which has an amazing public school system, and nothing comes close to that that I have witnessed, at least on the eastern part of Massachusetts, and the music programs. That is so exciting. I started playing trombone when I was in 4th grade. It only lasted 4 years, but it was an amazing experience. And to be able to give our kids that is wonderful. And brain development relating to music and how to, okay. Did that answer the question?
Sure, that's great.
How do I, one issue that still needs to be addressed, I think I've been clear, cell phone usage in our school systems, and everything that we know about the neurological development of young adults who are going to be running our world when we are, hopefully, take a step back and give it to them.
Thank you.
What do you consider? Well, one of the compliments I have to say are the extracurricular activities. As a former student of the Beacon City School District, to see the theater program blossom the way it has, sports the way it has, it's just amazing. It's not something I, as a former student, would have imagined we would have nowadays. And what issue do you still feel like needs to be addressed? I'm gonna have to touch on the all-day pre-K would be great. I mean, most parents during COVID were lucky enough to work from home, but now most parents do have to go back to work. So having all-day pre-K would be awesome. How do you propose? And I guess that's it, yeah.
Thank you.
So the first accomplishment goes back a ways, but the Chromebook one-to-one program was great, and it turned out to be life-saving in many ways when COVID hit. It was like, I was like, we look like geniuses. And so that's been a really great thing. And I also think it was a really good example of what was possible. I think there were a lot of people who thought, oh, this is too crazy and it's going to be too much money and how are we going to maintain it? And like, Dr. Landau came in and the administration and the board rallied, and it was just like, we can do this, and we did it. And honestly, like, it made as unideal as like remote instruction was, it made it possible for the district. The second thing I really want to bring up is special education pre-K. We are the only district in the county that has a special education pre-K program, and I cannot emphasize enough how difficult it was to apply for that program and to make it happen. And in a place where there are wait lists of kids who need a program like this, it is an absolute miracle, and it is a tribute to our very, very dedicated staff and admins who made that happen. I think in terms of something that still needs to be addressed, I approach this a lot of times from a communications background, and I would still like us to like to see a place where we do a really good job of sort of gathering and cataloging and explaining and organizing everything that's going on in the district. And I mean, and the website, like, it was a good iteration of that, but it definitely, like, its time has come and gone, and I want to see more organization around the way we communicate. So, but that's my pet thing. So,
Thank you.
So the next question is a little more kind of personality or personal based. Who asked the last one, me or you?
I did.
Okay, good. I even put my initial next to this one, but all right. So this question is, what unique perspectives or attributes do you feel you would bring to the board? And we're starting with Chris.
Oh, I started last time.
Oh
I'm
yeah,
happy
no,
to
it's
start.
my turn.
Happy to start
That's
if
why
you want.
Terry's here.
And we're taking turns here.
That's what I meant.
All right. So I've been really involved in education in some sort of way, probably since 10th grade with peer mediation and like my high school. And then I went to a few different colleges after graduating from high school. I got a pretty rough start leaving my public schooling. But I've been incredibly fortunate to go to Quebec and learn about their education program. I spent some time in Ojai, California, and in the UK studying at a school based on the teachings of the Indian philosopher Krishnamurti. What I've learned about holistic education and bringing students from A to B, C, D, and finally to Z. I've approached education in a variety of different ways based on not only what is coming out, but I was really lucky to have an incredible public school education. And I learned from my teachers directly about what it means to develop critical thinking and analysis. And those are the tools that in this incredibly chaotic, diverse, luckily, world that we live in, those are the tools that students need when they graduate to enter into the world we all live in.
Thank you. Levon?
So, with having a background in legal work, I'm familiar with contracts and following guidelines and staying within whatever legal course it is that we need to take. So I feel like that knowledge would help me with being on the board. Also, being a community volunteer, I've been able to have different perspectives of the residents here within this community and what they've needed. And just also being a former student here, I know what it is to be in the school district and to have support of great teachers and also know where there might be some gaps within the system. So I feel like I could bring that perspective to the board. And also just being a familiar face in the community. People will feel comfortable that, there's someone that I can relate to or someone I have a small interaction with or a personal relationship with where they could feel comfortable bringing their concerns that we could address and, fix.
Thank you.
So I guess I would say, obviously, my experience as a board member gives me a unique perspective. And I think that also having come here when things were still in such flux and having that perspective has been really valuable because I can see how far we've come and how we've gotten there. And that helps to understand, how we move beyond what we've accomplished so far. I also bring my experience as a communications professional for the New York State Assembly. And so working in state government, I sort of can see the connection between legislation and then how it impacts the district. This is a fairly new role for me, but I am learning sort of how advocacy works and how we can impact what happens at the local level by paying attention to what's going on at the state level. So I think that's what I'm bringing.
Thank you. Chris?
Yeah, thanks. So I do think I bring sort of an education perspective. I think it's important to have a board that's not all educators because we need a diversity of perspectives, but I do think it's helpful to have someone who has been an educator. And I have been a teacher, I've been a school leader, and through my nonprofit work, I've coached school leaders from across the country, which has given me an opportunity to see and support a lot of different types of communities and different types of schools, and so I think I could bring those perspectives. I'll also say that the school that I worked at the longest, where I was a teacher and a principal, was in a really diverse community that was very different than Beacon, but had some similarities in that, when I look at Beacon and as I'm knocking on doors and standing at the farmer's market getting signatures, one of my first questions after do you live in Beacon is, how long have you been here? And a lot of people have said 2, 4, 6 months, and a lot of people said decades and generations, and that's just the community that we live in, and that's hard. Like there are dynamics there that are that impact the way that we need to do our job as a board. And the community where I served was also diverse, where this is actually in Silicon Valley in California, and so there were a lot of sort of technology families. There were also a lot of recent immigrants, and there was many different types of communities that were all sort of together in our school, and we had to figure out what does that mean to build a school community. So that's something that is really important to me, and I think I would bring. And then finally, I would just say, I can't do anything by myself as a board member. We're a team, kind of. We're a body. And so as I think about just myself as a person on the board and how I am on teams, I've been described as earnest. Like when I want to do something, I get really into it and get really serious about it and devote a lot of energy. I also really think I prioritize listening and sort of hearing other perspectives, and I approach things in a pretty analytic and kind of strategic way. So I love problem solving and sort of balancing all the different inputs, and I think those kind of personal attributes would also fit well with board service.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Levon. New York State has a Dignity for All Students law that aims to protect all of our students from bullying, discrimination, and harassment, regardless of race, religion, sexual, or gender orientation. How well do you think the Beacon City School District is doing in upholding this law? Second part is, what will you do to ensure that this law is being upheld in our district so that all of our students are being supported?
I do believe that the school district is doing a good job at upholding it, but we do have to realize technology is so easily accessible for students nowadays, and it's hard to monitor any and everything that these kids are doing. I mean, they have access to stuff that we didn't have access to when we were younger. So we just have to, I think if we keep the kids informed, also keep the parents informed about the things that, schools seeing, and just get everybody on one accord, on the same page, then I think we can make a lot more progress. What will you do to ensure? I would think as the board, we would make sure that the schools are following the law and doing what they need to if it comes to reporting or anything that, and just bump it up against what the law is required. But I do think it's very important that we have to also get the parents involved, even if that means we have to have some type of information session about what they should look for, because technology has come and it's not something that everyone can have an exact control over.
So I can say, based on experience, that yes, I do think that the district does a good job of dealing with bullying and harassment. It's something as a board member that issues may arise, and you may have to have discussions about them in executive session. And I think that as a board and as a district, we do a really good job of identifying and addressing issues. And again, I know I brought it up before, but I mean, the bringing restorative classrooms and restorative justice to the district, I think, was a big deal. And I think it has gone a long way toward helping students understand and helping classrooms be safer spaces for students. I also think that we have addressed it over the years through policy. Like, policies are living things, and it's something that evolves with a district and evolves with the time. And so we've addressed, we've looked at policies around bullying and how do they need to change, and how, and what being punitive versus sort of being, being more open to discussion. And so I think that we've done a good idea of, or a good job of evolving that over the time. I mean, I guess in terms of ensure that the law is being upheld, I mean, a lot of the time just comes down to asking questions when we're having these discussions, whether it's a policy discussion or a specific issue, just asking questions and really trying to understand what a specific situation was and if things are being addressed in the right way.
I would honestly say I don't know how the district is doing with this law, and as I was talking to my neighbors in preparation for this, I hear a lot of things about how amazing the schools are and how amazing their experiences or their kids' experiences have been. But I also talked to family right down the street that experienced a really, really difficult bullying episode that lasted for years, and that the family didn't feel like they had an outlet to discuss with someone. And I heard other people, maybe in less specific terms, talk about how tough middle school is. And I know middle school can be tough for a lot of kids in a lot of places, but that doesn't mean that we should be okay with that. And so I think that the board and the district is definitely doing good things here. And we've heard about some of those. But I think at the end of the day, whether we're doing a good job or not isn't for us to decide. It's for the students and the families who are actually experiencing the schools to decide. And what I would want to do as a board member is kind of increase and double down our efforts to hear that feedback, to hear from families and kids, the ones who actually matter most on this question, about what their experience has been like, and just take an honest look at that and know that we've done good things and we can have good policies. And if there's still kids experiencing that in our schools, then we're still not done. And we need to keep working until everyone feels safe at school. And knows that they have an advocate in the district who can support them through anything that they're working through.
I'm gonna go off what I've heard, based on people who I know who have kids in the upper grades. Generally, bullying is less common in elementary schools. And once hormones kick in middle school, it's just Lord of the Flies. And I have heard that there are some issues at the middle school when it comes to bullying, when it comes to students on the LGBTQ plus community. There are parents who are concerned. I don't know why that is happening. I've talked to parents who are of what I would say like an older mindset of what I grew up in, is that kids will be kids. Personally, I found that incredibly damaging. But I think that when you have 670 kids in one school and you have 2 social workers, how can you possibly really address the issues when it comes to bullying, access to people who can actually speak to the psychological experience of the developing brain in those particular settings? I am not an expert on children or mental health or psychology even, but I do know that having, as actually the parents of the child of 2 therapists, I do know that having access changes the game. And I've never been a part of the board. I don't know where this would actually come in as far as my role, but I do think that students need to have greater access to mental health resources.
Thank you. So my next question is, are there specific curricular or technological advances that you would like to see brought into our district? And I'm going to add a little bit to that, in part based on what I'm hearing here, but also in part based on my own experiences as a teacher and some things, things that have been brought up. Advances, this could also include technological, I don't know what the opposite of advances is,
Facts.
because it's without it sounding negative, right? Moving away from some of the technology, are there things that you feel that you'd like to, changes that you'd like to see in the district regarding that? And we are starting with Flora.
Oh, okay. I forgot the order that we were
That is
going in.
correct, yes.
Thank you.
Okay, yes. So I think, we've been talking in the policy committee about phone policy. And I do think in terms of technology, not necessarily taking away, but changes, I definitely would like to see us address the issue of media literacy in a more thorough way. I feel like and this kind of ties technology and curriculum together. I feel like our kids are sort of swimming in these waters that they don't fully understand, and we don't fully understand. And I had explained it earlier by I was talking to a friend and she's fighting with her daughter about when to get a phone. And her daughter was like, "Well, when did you get a phone?" And she was like, "We didn't have phones. They did not exist." And her daughter's mind was just like blown. And so it's like they have these things and they were born into this and we don't understand it because we did not have it when we were their age. And I want there to be a really robust curricula that's age appropriate at every grade level, about like this is what this technology is, and this is what it does, and this is the way, because for kids, like when they're younger, it's like a toy almost, and as they get older, it's a tool, but we have to teach them to use the tool responsibly and not to be afraid of it, but to be responsible with it. And that's really, really what I want for the district.
Thank you.
So the question is about curricular or technological advances. So yeah, I think that a focus on curriculum and specifically what is kind of our cohesive vision for what we want learning to be is really important. I've spoken about that tonight. If there's a specific curriculum, it's less about that than having kind of a coherent vision and goals that we can find curricula to match. And I think technology is the same way, right? Technology is a tool. And so if you center the question of technology, you're missing something, because like technology towards what end, towards what goal? And I think it's important for us to talk about what skills will our kids be able to have once they leave us, and how are we teaching them those skills now? Phones is certainly a hot button issue that I think would be important for us to deal with. I think another one is artificial intelligence. That is here. And our graduates are going into colleges where AI will be there, and they'll be going into jobs where AI will be present, and if not necessary, to be able to use in a strategic way. But it's scary because it's new technology, and we need as we're preparing our students for what happens after school, we need to remember that they're not there yet, they're still kids. And so we need to take care of them and keep them safe and prioritize their well-being, whether it's with phones or whether it's with artificial intelligence. So how do we create that learning environment that's safe enough where they can be kids, where they can be happy, where we can help them manage all the stress that they're dealing with that sometimes comes along with this technology, but at the same time, be really strategic about what are we using that technology for, what's our vision for what they need to be able to do, and how can we support teachers who, again, are all in the middle of all of this to make sure that they have the clarity and the resources and the time to be able to prepare to do their best work that they're capable of doing, preparing these experiences for our kids.
Thank you.
As far as technological advances, I was recently described by one of my best friends as analog. I was born in '83. I'm like the last bit of the millennial. I didn't have a cell phone in my car until I was 16 and got my driver's license, and I wasn't allowed to use it. It just sat in the car for emergency purposes. And I think media literacy you can learn without unfettered access to media, to computers, to cell phones. Personally, I do not think that middle schoolers have the mental capacity to be responsible when it comes to cell phone usage. Everything that we have seen over the past 5 years dealing with social media and the impact on developing brains, on the impact on confidence, on the impact on body dysmorphia, it has on the impact on anxiety. All of these things have increased, and we have all of the data at our fingertips over the past 4 years, now that we have an entire generation of kids growing up with cell phone usage, we have access to that information, and I think it's really important that we start protecting kids that acknowledge, in a way that acknowledges the fact that they cannot protect themselves.
Thank you. Levon?
As far as the curricular, I would like to see, and what you, Flora and Chris have touched on, a little less usage of the cell phone, but also teaching the kids responsibility of technology. Growing up, like Meg just said, I didn't get a cell phone until I was in high school. I was born in '83, so
Yes.
we didn't get in high school until, a cell phone was in junior in high school. I think it's just important to teach them how to be responsible with it. And also teaching them the basics. I take classes at the local community college, and to see some of these freshmen come in and don't know how to use Word or how to use Excel or don't know how to communicate with their classmates, I think that's something that we need to get back to, teaching them the basics. I mean, in my field, I work in the finance world right now, and we talk to each other on Teams all the time, and to see these kids sitting in class not knowing how to communicate through Teams with their counterparts was a little disturbing. So I think as far as the curriculum, that is something that we need to get back to. As far as technology advances, I'm not too sure or familiar with that. So I'm just here to listen and learn as far as that piece there. But I really do think we need to get back to the basics, what's teaching these kids that, you're leaving high school, you're going into the real world. And using Word and Excel is something that's going to be a part of that. So we need to just focus on teaching them those things. That's it.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
And I want to thank you, Levon and Meg, for making me feel old.
Thank you, Terry. I thought it
was-
was just
I was
me.
starting college in 1983.
Age is relative.
Yes.
Age is totally relative. Always.
Okay,
I was
our
26
last
when I got
question.
a phone.
I believe, Chris, you're up. What improvements do you think could be made to how the Board of Ed currently operates?
Yeah, thanks for the question. I first just want to commend the current board. Like I said earlier, I think the district has just made so much progress with the current Board of Education and the district leadership. So I think there are a lot of wins to build on. I've probably said this for every question, so I do think that a focus on instruction and kind of classroom learning is one way that we can improve, and I think that's a perspective that I can bring. And the other one is, how are we really engaging with our community? Again, I've been coming to the meetings for the past few months, usually sitting right there, and often kind of the only one in the room who doesn't either work at the district or be on the board. And I don't know how many of y'all are watching at home. That's a great way to engage too. But how are we really engaging with our community? And even as I'm telling my friends and neighbors about this election, it's a surprise to a lot of folks. And so how can we increase the way that we're communicating, but not just communicating out, also inviting folks in, so that we can really benefit from the full kind of diversity of the Beacon community, and make sure that we're being responsive to them, because that's, I think, our job as a board. And we can't do that unless we have really ways to hear and understand where folks are coming from and what they're hoping to get out of their city school system.
Thank you.
I am not sure. I have not been able, this is the first time I've been able to come to a board meeting. It would require me getting a babysitter. Gina, lovely friend, is currently watching my children, who should be in bed. That is a reality. Like, in the future, if I was seated on the board, I would get a babysitter. It doesn't necessarily mean that I want to spend $20 an hour to come here and witness the board. However, you can watch it, which I have found. Recently, you can actually watch the board meetings after they happen, which is pretty cool. From what I've seen, the board functions very well, just based on the I mean, sort of insane leaps that have been made in the past 5 years, I, I, I've been quite impressed. So, good job.
I would say that coming from a time when the board was, there was just a lot of drama circulating within then what was going on. I think it deterred a lot of people from wanting to be involved and coming and being engaged. So I do think that the board would just need to make a bigger footprint on the community, let them know, like, we've got new people going on. We want to hear what's going, what your concerns, reach out. I think that they could do a bigger effort with that. But currently, I don't think that there's anything else that would need to be done unless, getting voted into the seat. But yeah, just leaving a bigger footprint on the community, because a lot of people were turned away with what was going on and they just threw up their hands and they'd given up. And I think that's something that the board would need to do.
So I say this as a member of the board. The reason I'm prefacing it that way is because I don't really know who would take this on. This is something that it kind of falls in the cracks. But one thing that you realize is that even though we get training through the New York State School Board Association, it doesn't really prepare you for the specific environment of your board. Like, every district is different and every board has a different personality and operates differently. And when I say I spent the first term figuring out how to be a functional, like good board member, like, I mean it. I didn't really understand Robert's Rules of Order, and I didn't really understand, like, if I had an issue that I wanted to talk about, how I bring it up and what's okay and what's not okay and what does it mean to stay in your lane and when is it okay to kind of veer out of your lane. And I think it would be really great if we had more onboarding. And I mean, I think Meredith is actually, our board president has actually done a really good job of like meeting individually with candidates and talking to them about what it means to be a board member. But I feel like I almost wish I had started a document when I first started this, like, you'll have to do this and remember this and think about this, because there's just so much you don't know that you need to know. So I think the onboarding would be really great, but who's going to take that on, really?
We won't hold you to that. Can I just add a closing thought in response to this? So my son is 20, and we had a number of years here where this room was packed, where we had to be in the auditorium. So in a way, it's a real tribute to the board that nobody's showing up, because it means
doing our
I
job.
mean, yes, there's apathy. Yes, there are people who are like, I just don't care. But it's also that, like, when it's working, nobody shows up. And I just want to say how grateful I am to the board and to all of the administration and to Dr. Landau for just doing the work that you do.
Add one more thing also. I just want to thank you all for actually doing this. Take it from me, running for office is not a ride in the park. So I thank you for stepping forward to serve your community.
Thanks, Terry.
Thank you.
Thanks, Deb.
I'd like to thank Deb and Terry for their hard work in putting all of the questions from the community together into a concise format that we were able to fit in this time. I want to thank all of you. I know you're just very good. You landed that plane very well.
Yeah, there you go.
I want to thank all of you for being willing to sit through this. It's not easy, and I think you all made it look much easier than it is. Sitting up there and being asked questions and having to think like this is definitely a challenge, and I appreciate all of the work and thought and effort that it took to be here tonight. So, and I think that we're very lucky that we have this kind of interest in the board and we have really fine candidates. Since this is a competitive election, not everyone is going to get on. One thing I would encourage is that stay interested, stay involved in your PTOs. The board has committees that focus on specific areas that were brought up tonight. So definitely pay attention to when those meetings are. Those are open to the public, and a lot of less formal discussion happens at those, that gets more into the detail of the nitty-gritty. And continue to pay attention, stay involved, and always think about running again if you don't get on, because there could be another year when there's not a competitive election. And a lot of the board members have been on for a long time, and so it's really important to keep a fresh group of people, and anybody in the audience whose interest is piqued tonight, start coming to meetings and really pay attention, because it's so helpful and it makes a huge difference. So thank you so much again. Thank you to the audience for coming out and being interested, and have a good evening.